Hi everyone, Nigel Saunders here. Today I'm going to try and get the perfect photograph of my dwarf Schefflera Bonsai. It's been just over a month since I defoliated the tree, and now the new leaves are growing in and they're nice and tiny and miniature looking, and it's time to get the photograph. It's quite early in the morning still. The tree's in the greenhouse. It's kind of cool out here. It's about 7 degrees Celsius. I'm going to wait till it warms up a little before I bring the tree out. So in the meantime, I'm going to clean up the background. I've got my bucket of soap and water, and I'll wash it down to try and get a nice black background. I'm going to take this photograph using natural light, and if you don't have a black background like this, you can use a plain wall or a fence or anything that doesn't distract your eye from the tree. All right, I'll begin washing the background now. It's starting to look better already. I've got the background washed up, so it's as black as I can get it. To really make your bonsai tree look the best, it should have a stand underneath the pot. I don't have a lot of stands, and the ones I have are usually homemade ones. So I'll see if I can find something that I can place the pot on and kind of set the tree off. The table I've got out here is just an end table, and I cut the legs off short to make it more of a bonsai table. I think with a little cleaning up, it might do the job. I've got an old stool here, and for smaller bonsais, this would work quite nicely. I've got an old wooden drawer here from a chest of drawers that's been sitting out the back, kind of rotting away, and even this would look quite nice with the tree on top. Having a stand underneath your bonsai pot can elevate the pot to a nice viewing height for the tree. It also sets it apart from a tree that's just placed on the table. It makes it look special. It draws your eye in and you look at the tree. You can get really creative when designing a display for your bonsai tree. One thing to keep in mind is that the focus should be on the tree in the pot, not on your display stand or your accent plants. The focus should lead your eye in to the tree. Usually with bonsai, simple is always better. I'll get the tree out from the greenhouse now and begin to set up the display. I'll try the tree on the box first and see how it looks. The box has the right patina on it. It looks aged and antique and kind of matches the tree in the pot, but you can see there's a lot of edges along the side that distract your eye. The color isn't very uniform across the front, so it's not really a good choice. It takes the focus away from the tree too much. I'll try the tree on the table next and see how that looks. Here's my Schefflera on the table, and I would criticize the table. It's a little thick along the front edge here. It's just too much mass under the tree. A lighter table would definitely be better, but I don't have a lighter table, so I'm thinking maybe I can stain the table darker. That'll make it blend in more with the background and become less noticeable. So I think that's what I'll do. I don't have a lot of other choices. I could place the tree on a slab of wood or something like that maybe. I'll look around and see if I have something. Maybe I can try that. I couldn't find any slabs of wood that would be suitable underneath the tree, so I think I'm going to use the table, and I'm going to stain it. I'll use the roofing tar that I use on the plant room, and I'll rub it on with a cloth, and that should get in all the grain in that and darken it up and give it a consistent finish. Roofing tar actually makes a nice stain. They used to use it on violins actually, way back in the old days. And maybe still do, I don't know. So, this mixture in here is thinned 50% with Varsol. So you can use any thinner. So you just dip a rag in and apply it on. And it looks black at first, but then as you rub it in, you get this nice color. And it really highlights any imperfections in the wood. It makes them black because it soaks into the cracks and crevices. And you can get quite a nice finish on your wood. Especially in the sun, it has a kind of a golden sheen to it. So it kind of brings out the patina in the wood. And I think that's why they use it on violins, is that it emphasizes the grain of the violin. So this is just a sample piece of wood, but you can see the effect. So there it is. So when the sun is shining on that, it turns a really nice kind of golden color. It looks really nice. So I'll try putting this on my table and we'll see how it looks. Here's a close-up of the board stained with the roofing tar. So you can see it's a nice effect. It really makes it look antique. Yeah, it's very pleasing. I'll begin applying the tar to the table now. So here I go. And you just want to put a thin layer on. If it gets too thick, it takes too long to dry. A thin layer will dry in about 15 minutes in the sun. So I just picked these end tables up at garage sales. If you see one that looks suitable, just buy it, cut the legs off short, and you've got a little bonsai table. It may not be very authentic, it may not be the best quality, but it's a table. So it's definitely darkening it up, which is good. I've had this table for many, many years. All right, I'll start doing this front face now. That's looking quite nice. You want to get it on nice and even so it doesn't look blotchy. I'm staining it all the way around, so you know, if you ever get a low angle shot, you don't see the part underneath that's not got the tar on it. So you want a nice even finish all the way around. Okay, let's get it back on its legs here, and I'll do an inspection. Make sure I've got everything covered that I want to. Look for runs or streaks. I think that's looking really good. That'll do. I'll let that dry. I'm going to put the display stand in the sun to dry, and I'll go on with phase 2 of this ultimate photograph project, and I'll get the tree ready to look its best. The tree is back on the bench now, and I'm going to go in and look at all the details and correct anything that I can. At the present moment, the leaves are really small on the tree. They're just coming in, but there's still some that are larger than others. So here's a large one here, and you compare that to, you know, most of them are a lot smaller. So I take away all the largest leaves, and that kind of balances the foliage mass on the tree. I won't be removing a lot of leaves, just the largest ones. So this one here, there's one down here, there's one out front here, one here. If I left these big leaves on, these branches would grow with too much vigor. They would get quite large compared to the rest of them. So this is part of the balancing process. There's some old leaf stems that haven't come off yet that I'll just take off. So that looks pretty balanced. There's a few out front here that are quite large. I'll take that one off, I think, and this one. The next step is to come in, and there's all kinds of debris down at the base of the tree, pine needles that have fallen down. There's a weed in there that I'll have to pull out, and then I'll have to deal with the moss. I'm coming in with the tweezers and picking out all the debris and picking out weeds. There's a weed there. These long-handled tweezers are invaluable. They just are fantastic for reaching in forests and plantings like this to get into places where your fingers just couldn't reach. For this photograph, I'm going to use natural light, just the sun itself. So right now the tree's in the shade and it won't come into the sun until later on in the day. So I'm doing all this prep work in the morning, so when the sun does come out, I'm ready to take the photographs. The sunlight changes throughout the day, so I'm going to take a series of photographs all throughout the day to try and get the one with the best lighting, because the sun kind of shines behind the tree, so you get a lot of nice backlighting. And then I might have to use some reflectors to try and get more light on the front of the tree. So it'll be interesting to see what I can do with natural light. I'm also going to photograph this tree over a period of several weeks. So right now the leaves are really small and they're just starting to come out. So, you know, in the next few days it changes. The leaves get larger, more leaves come in, and there'll be a certain point where the tree looks its absolute best. And that may be a matter of opinion, but there will be a point where the leaves still look miniature, but they've all filled in. And so a series of photographs can really be helpful. It'll you can look at it and judge which stage of the tree looks the best. And if you're submitting your tree for a show or something, you want a nice photo so you can show the what the tree can look like at its best. And this is, if you're going in a major show or something. So it's important to get a really nice photograph of your tree. Another good reason to photograph your trees is bonsai trees are living things and anything could go wrong. I could have the heat go off in my greenhouse and this tree could die overnight. So it's always nice to have a nice photograph of your tree to always remember it by and inspire you to maybe grow another one. It's amazing how much debris falls off surrounding trees in the area. Our Kitchener-Waterloo Bonsai Society has a virtual show coming up. The photographs have to be submitted by the end of October. So look for that coming up. It'll be quite exciting to see all the members' trees. Now, let's see if I can get that weed in there. It's not easy to get at, even with these long tweezers. There we go, I got it. I've got all the debris cleaned up underneath the tree now and on top of the moss. So the next step is to look at the moss itself. Right now the moss is grown all the way up to the tree. So there's no areas on this planting at all that don't have moss. And underneath a shade tree generally, there's an area of shade and nothing grows underneath the tree because it's all shaded out. So usually with this planting, I keep a perimeter of moss around the outside of the tree, and then I remove the moss on the inside. And I replace that with sand or something. And it gives a real natural look to the tree. So that's what I'll be doing next. I'll be picking away all the moss from around the roots. For this operation, I'll put the tree on my spinning tree bonsai turntable. And I'll begin the work. I'll save the moss just in case I want to put some areas back. When you're doing this kind of moss work, you've kind of got to get into the bonsai zone. You've got to think of the tree as a full-size tree and start looking at the details to see what looks natural and realistic and what doesn't. So get in that frame of mind that you're looking at a full-size tree. You can see at the front of the tree here, the moss is growing up the roots. So I'm going to use a toothbrush, just come in and scrape the moss away from the root base. At the present moment, there's moss all around the front here, and it doesn't look very inviting. I think I'm going to try putting a pathway into the tree, or an opening in the moss that kind of leads your eye into the root base of the tree, and I think that'll make the tree look more inviting, like you could walk in underneath it. You don't have to climb over all that grass, which is moss. So I'm going to try that. Alright, so I kind of want a path leading in, so I'm going to remove the moss from the front here.
And I'm taking it off in a big piece, so if it doesn't look good, I can always put it back. So I don't want a straight path, I want one that kind of curves in. Maybe something like that. I'll have a look and see how that looks from the front. It's not big enough. It needs to be larger. It's looking better, but it's still too small looking. Yeah, that looks quite natural there. I think that'll look good. Here's a look from the front now, and I think once I get more of this moss away from the base of the tree, it'll look quite natural. I decided to add a little bit of moss at the front, and it kind of splits the pathway into two. So you could either walk in this way or that way and around the tree. So I think that looks better. It's subtle, but it just makes a little bit of a difference. I've got the moss at the base of the tree kind of to the level that I like. I think it looks quite realistic and natural. So the next step, I want to add a bit of sand to cover the soil up and wash it, and that'll kind of be the finishing touches around the base of the tree. The sand I'll be adding is just playground sand, and I'll just get it in a spoon and just plop it down. Right now it's wet because we've had rain lately and it was outside, but it doesn't matter if it goes on wet or dry. So you can put it all around the base of the tree, and when I wash it with the watering can, it'll just run wherever it wants. All right, here I go. This is just plain rainwater. You can see how the sand flows around. Just like that. Put a bit over this side. Just like that. My next step is to clean up the moss around the edge of the pot. You can see that it's kind of grown about halfway across the lip here, so I need to prune that back. I'll get the curved scissors, and you just come in, find the edge of the pot, which is here, and just prune away. And that makes it look really nice. Neat and tidy, and then you can just press the lip of the moss down here, or the edge of the moss down. Like that. And when that's cleaned up, it looks really, really good. If you have any roots that are overhanging the edge of the pot, you'll want to prune those back too. That looks very untidy to have little roots poking out. I've got the moss cleaned up from the edges of the pot here, but you'll notice that it's quite high. So the next step, I'm going to try and prune the moss back a bit. So I don't want to prune it back to the point where it's not green, but I do want to take it back where it's getting too tall. And right now the moss looks very uniform, and maybe I want to break that up a bit. So by pruning back to some darker moss underneath, maybe that's better to have it so it doesn't look like a nice mowed lawn. It might look a little more natural. So that's what I'll do now, is just prune away at the moss, getting it down in height, and kind of making it a little more variation. So there's some high spots, some low spots. I've got all my moss pruned up, so now I'm going to give it all a final wash and get rid of all the sand on the side of the pot. General cleanup. I've just heavily watered this tree, and because it doesn't have a lot of leaves,
the soil will stay wet for too long. So I'm going to tip it up, and that'll help drain the excess water out of the pot and keep the soil at a better moisture level.
You can see with the pot tipped up how much water is now running out of the pot. So it's good if you don't want to keep your soil wet. Just tip it up like this and it'll drain really nicely. The sun is getting closer to shining on the bench here. You can see it up in the sky there. So it'll have to go behind the pine tree here, over to here, and then I got sunshine for the afternoon. And it should be nice, you know, nice backlighting on the tree. And then I'll get a reflector to light up the front part. That should look pretty good.
I'm going to clean up my table here, get out my display stand, and get everything set up so I'm ready for when the sun hits the bench. The tree has stopped dripping, so I can place the tree on top of the display table now.
I think for the final shot, I'll be zooming in to kind of just the tree, and the display table will be sort of in the background. You won't see it. It's not a very suitable table for this tree. As I said, it's a little heavy looking. It makes the tree look too small. So it needs a smaller table and a more delicate table. So there's a bit of sun hitting the back of the tree now, which is kind of looking cool.
The pot that this tree is planted in was one of my very first bonsai pots I bought. I bought two of them, this size and a smaller one, and I'm using both of them, and I've used both of them for the last 27 years. So this pot is the same age as this tree basically. So you want to match the pot with the tree. You don't want a shiny new pot with a really old looking tree, and you don't want a really, you know, new looking tree with a really ancient and weather beaten pot. You want the two to match, the age of the tree and the pot. So what you don't want to do on an old pot is get out the oil, the mineral oil or whatever you use, and shine the pot up before a show. You want an old pot to look flat and dull and, you know, have the natural patina on it. You don't want to polish it all up and, you know, make it look brand new again. So I'm going to clean the pot up, but I'm not going to apply any oil to make it shine. So it has a natural dull kind of patina now. When I got it, it was really shiny, and now it's starting to dull. So that's what you want. You want your pot to match your tree.
I'm going to come in with my cloth and just get all the sand and everything off the pot. And I use rainwater on my bonsai, so I don't really get a problem with lime buildup. You'll get a little buildup with you know, the fertilizer you use, but generally lime isn't a problem if you're using rainwater or distilled water. You've got to pay special attention to the feet. You don't want any dirt on the feet in the photograph. It looks really bad if there's stains or anything on the feet. So yeah, just go through your pot and take a careful eye, examine everything and make sure all the details are good. You know, that you've got everything cleaned off of it. There's a little spot of sap or something on there. I'm taking a really critical look at the tree now. I notice I've got a lot of, you know, chunks of sand and that on the moss that I need to pick out. Just little details. Getting everything cleaned up. You can, you know, edit your photos in Photoshop, but I don't like to do that. That's kind of, it's almost cheating. I like the photograph to be exactly how the tree was presented. And I think, you know, if you were to submit these photos for a show or something and they're photoshopped, I don't think that's very fair. I think, you know, if I was the organizer of a show, I would want to see the tree exactly as it is, not how it can be after some photo editing.
This Schefflera is a very light colored tree. The bark is very light color. The leaves are a fairly light color, so the black background suits it really well. If you had a tree with a very dark trunk and dark needles, something like a black pine or something, a black background may not be the right choice for the tree. You might want to use something, a neutral gray or even a white background.
Another point to consider when photographing your tree is what lens to use. Right now, I've got my zoom lens here on its widest angle, so you're seeing kind of a wide angle shot, and it gives a lot of perspective in the tree. Whereas if I come back and then I zoom in like that and then fill the tree with the frame, I have a lot less perspective. So it's something to consider. How much perspective do you want in the planting? To me, that looks about right. It looks kind of like naturally what my eye would see. Whereas if I zoom out and fill the frame, I think I'm getting too much perspective in that. It's too distorted looking. You don't see the silhouette of the tree so much because of all the front branches stick up too high. So I think it's better to step back to about here.
Because I'm using a black background, if I were to use auto exposure on the camera, it would overexpose the tree because it's trying to expose for the black background. So you'll need a camera with a manual exposure on it, and you also want to be able to control your f-stop, which will control your depth of field. You don't want the front of your tree in focus and the back of your tree out of focus. You want the entire range of your tree in focus on the camera. I've got the tree all framed up in the camera. I'm going to switch from video mode to photography mode, or still mode, and I'll take a few sample shots. I've taken a few shots and I've, changed the exposure a bit, and I'll play around with, some distance shots and some close-up shots and that kind of thing when the light gets better. So I'm waiting for the sun to hit the planting now. And it's a bit of a cloudy day today, so I think I'll get a good variation in light. I may get some full sun shots and I may get some cloudy shots. So it'll be interesting to see what looks the best. Probably the diffused light, but we'll see. So I am slowly getting sun on the tree. It's looking quite nice. Quite beautiful. I've got a large reflector board over here. So it's just a silver mylar covered piece of styrofoam, and I think that'll work quite well. It'll reflect light back to the front of the tree. So I should get some pretty good lighting, I hope. So, and it shouldn't be too long. You can see the tree is starting to get lit up already. Very exciting. So back to photography. I'm taking a variety of shots. I'm getting low down to the tree, close-ups, kind of higher up shots. And when the sun comes out, when it's hitting the tree right, I'll try different lenses on the camera also. Right now I'm using a 10 to 18 zoom lens, and I have some prime lenses, so I'll probably try a 35 millimeter and maybe a 50 millimeter also. My sunny skies are starting to get quite gray, especially over this direction. It looks like it could be rain coming in even. So I'm not sure what kind of photograph I'll get this afternoon, how much sun I'll get on the tree, if I get any at all, but it'll certainly brighten up towards the later part of the afternoon once the sun clears this pine tree. Even though it's getting cloudy out, it gives a nice light to the tree. I find that natural light really brings the tree alive. If you use, flashes and artificial light, it's just another step that makes the bonsai look more artificial. So I've always liked trees photographed in natural light. I'm going to switch lenses now. I'm going to try the 50 millimeter first and then the 35 millimeter. I'm on the 50 millimeter lens now, and you can see how much closer it appears. So I've got to move the camera back, and this will allow me to get a more of a true kind of front view of the tree without having a lot of perspective. So I'll move the camera back now. I've moved the camera back now, and I'm about 2 meters away from the tree now. So
whereas before I was about a meter away from the tree, so I'm twice as far back. So I'll switch to photography mode and take some shots. I've switched now to the 35mm lens, and yeah, it's sort of in between the wide angle and the 50mm, which has to get me fairly far back. So I'll take some shots with that. While I'm waiting for the light, I'll try switching trees. I'll get my Austrian pine out, which is a darker tree, and I'll try and show you how it doesn't look quite as good with a black background because it's a darker tree. I've got the Austrian pine in. It doesn't quite fit in the frame of the black background, but I'll try and take some shots of that, and you can just see how it doesn't pop as much as the Schefflera does because it's a darker tree. You can see that the dark trunk almost blends in with the black background, so definitely a lighter background would suit the Austrian pine much better. You can also do a two-point display where you have the tree and an accent plant in your planting. And I've got the fern over there on the left-hand side, and it's a little large for the tree. You would want something smaller, but you can see how ferns kind of give a tropical feel to everything, so a little fern would look quite good as an accent plant. While I'm waiting for the sun to come out, I'll show you some updates. The first update is my pink pixie bougainvillea, and it's got a lot of flowers on it now. Yeah, it's just getting more and more flowers every day. You can see flowers coming out here, here, down here. There's a cluster forming here, a couple back here. So very exciting. I've got a lot of flowers on it. It's looking quite beautiful. The next update is the jade tree that Scott Winard sent me from Let's Do Bonsai. And last time I stripped all the branches off it. They were sprouting out on the trunk because I wanted to keep it a tall trunk and have all the foliage at the top. And it started sprouting more branches again, so I'll have to rub those off and just keep my foliage up top. All right, here I go. I'll just rub them off by hand. Just have to peel them off like that. Just scrape the wounds nice and flush with your fingernail. And that's got it. That's back to a straight trunk. You can tell when you have your reflector set up correctly. So if you come down, I'm high here, you can see the reflector is quite dark. And as I come down towards the tree, the reflector brightens up. So I've got the right angle so the sun is shining on the tree.
I was reviewing the photos I took today, and I don't think I ever got the perfect shot. I think I would need the sun out to do that, to kind of backlight the tree, and then the reflector would give a bit of light on the front. But I'll show you the photos that I think are the best from today. We'll have a look at those now. I was also looking at the photos and kind of critiquing the tree. I think with the leaves being so small, the tree looks a little small for the pot at the moment. But then as those branches start to grow in, it'll look more in proportion. So I'll take some more photos of the tree in maybe a week and then maybe another 2 weeks, and we'll see how the pot looks. The pot could probably be a better color too. Right now it's stands out a little too much. More of a an earth tone would probably suit the tree better. So it's something, you know, you can continuously improve with your trees in the future. Look at the photos and critique them, and, you know, in the back of your mind, have some ideas for what changes you want for the future. It looks like the day is getting even more cloudy, so I may never get my sunny shot of the tree today, but I'll try for another day. That's all for today. I'm Nigel Saunders. Thanks for joining me in the Bonsai Zone. I'm working on the plant room today. Yesterday, I got a little bit of work done. I got all the structure under the window cleared out, and I cut all these pieces to replace what was there, which was rotted. This side was good. So this side I just had to put the wood preservative and the tar on it, and that side is good, but this side they were all rotten, and the beam underneath the window was all rotted, so I had to rebuild the whole structure. So here it is on the floor. I've tarred all the pieces that will get assembled, and then I'll screw it all together and then tar the outside and fit it in place. And I think I've got a jack under the window, but there's no load on this wall anymore. There's no roof on it. So I think when I release the jack, the window will stay in place. It's screwed in from the sides and foamed in place, so I don't think there's any danger of it falling out or anything like that. So it should be a matter of slipping this new assembly in place, and then there's a gap between the bottom of the window and the 2x4, and they normally put wedges in there and then put the spray foam in to seal it. So I will have the same gap. I'll wedge it so it's nice and snug, and then put the foam in and seal it all up. And that will fix the lower part of this outer wall. And then I can start on the upper part of it. Here's a view from the outside. You can see down in the basement, there's all the plants. It's a really nice temperature down here. It stays cool, but it never gets cold, it never gets warm. Really stable for the plants. I think this would probably be the ideal place to store them over the winter. And logically, it would make sense to keep the tropicals in the basement, and then upstairs, keep that room cold and store my hardy trees up there. But I think upstairs, because of the large windows, when the sun's out, it heats up, and I just think it wouldn't be as stable as an environment as down here for the hardy trees. So, and the tropical trees, you're relying on these LED lights, these aren't grow lights. These are just, I think they're shop lights. They were on sale, and I thought, well, they're better than nothing. And they seem to work quite well. So yeah, if they were down here, I'd be relying on all these grow lights, and I'm not sure how they would grow. It is cool down here, and there's probably enough light for them. I'll have to test that later on. But yeah, I think they would do okay down here. Maybe not thrive, but they would do okay. I let the assembly that goes underneath the window dry overnight, and this morning, I put it in place. It didn't go in really easily. I had to give it a little persuasion in the one corner, but it fits pretty good. It's not bad. The window sags a bit in the middle, so I'm going to have to get some wedges and space that up, and then get some foam in there to seal it all up. Yeah, eventually, I guess I'll need new windows, but I think it'll last quite well for now. If I seal it all up really nicely, it should do quite well for many years. It's a wet, cold, rainy day today. The roof is doing really well, keeping all the water out of the room. So I'm really happy that it's doing its job quite nicely, so I can keep working away inside. It's getting close to the end of the day, and here's a progress report. I have got everything screwed in place. The 4x4 post down here, all the uprights are screwed to the 4x4 post. The center beam is all screwed together and screwed down. So the wall's really solid now. You can't even budge it. It's feeling really good. So
that's a good job. That's the basis of this wall is getting the bottom of it all nice and strong. All the beams nice and strong. So yeah, getting closer to starting to work on the upper part of the wall here. I'll have to build it up to the right height to match the other existing wall over on this side of the room. And then I've got to take down this whole triangular section and then put all new roof trusses across here. So that'll be exciting doing that. I can see the light at the end of the tunnel somewhere.